Hi everyone, and welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you here. Before I dive into the topic, I would appreciate it if you would like this video, leave me a comment, share it out to everyone that you know, and I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscriptions, and I would really appreciate it, any and all help. All right, so didn't mean to do that. All right, so one of the things I talk about on this vidcast is the corporate press, what some people call the mainstream media, which I don't really think they're mainstream anymore. But it's something that I talk about often. I'm very critical of the press. Everyone who watches me knows this. I typically stand by, independent media. My website, StudioJakeMedia.com, where I write news and commentary about pop culture. It's totally independent. I run it myself, which often leads to grammatical errors. Fortunately, my readers and my friends are pretty quick to point it out, so I'm able to correct those. But it's a lot of fun to be independent when you don't have like a corporate overlord, you know, micromanaging you. You can do whatever you want to, and it's a lot of fun. And that's how I also run this channel. I have no backing from another large corporation. It's just me. And I find that the media that is independent is, more honest. Even if I disagree with them with what wavelength they are on certain scales, I still have an appreciation because I know they're being honest. So it gives me great joy when I see a media outlet that did sell out, that violated its code of ethics, its journalistic standards when they post their L's. And today, I am here to talk about Vice Media. So, what is Vice Media? They were really cutting edge when they were founded. They were co-founded by Gavin McGinnis, and of course they chased him out as soon as it became unfashionable to have someone who is, not totally left wing, in your on your board or in management. But as a result of that, Vice Media for a long time was very independent. They would do magazines and documentary series and podcasts. They were way at the forefront as sort of an independent media. Well, they grew, which nothing wrong with growing. Kudos to them because their documentaries were very popular. And I've seen a few of them, especially in the early days. Their documentary series were really well done. And they would go places where, again, the mainstream media, the corporate press, wouldn't go, and they would film just shocking things that was being ignored by the main press. And kudos to them. However, along the way, they started to get bigger, which meant that they had to go to people to get funding, and they had to create a board. And well, what happens when you create a board? The same thing that happened to James O'Keefe with Veritas, Project Veritas, is then the board members start making demands, and Vice Media slowly started to turn into just a similar press outlet that is, not recognizable to, say, CNN, which just more edgy, I guess you could say. They're a lot more edgy than CNN. Now, one thing I will give credit to Vice for is they'll do these panels where they'll have people from all different walks of life and political leanings. Those are still pretty cool. I've seen a few of those, and some people that I know personally are part of them. But because they chose that path of we're just going to, jump on board with the corporate press, it really hurt them, right? They weren't that edgy, new, independent media voice anymore. They were just another voice in the countless, aether of what is the corporate press. So Axios is reporting, and it's being widely reported, that they're preparing to file for bankruptcy. They've been trying to sell themselves. Their Vice Media has been trying to find one of those corporate overlords to buy them out, but they have to have a sale of at least $1 billion for it to make a profit. Otherwise, they're in so much debt they'll have to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So this is according to Axios. Vice Media is preparing to file for bankruptcy, according to two sources familiar with the matter. Why it matters. Vice was once considered one of the most successful news startups of all time when investors valued it as $5.7 billion in 2017. Now it's struggling to sell itself for more than a billion. So they go into a few more details about what's happening, about how they're trying to sell themselves, how they have a huge amount of debt, $30 million, to a company called Fortress Investment Group, and it seems like Fortress might be the one to take them over if they're not able to sell. So, um, and then they give a little bit of a backstory. Vice was co-founded by former Voice of Montreal colleagues Shane Smith, Soroushi Alvi, and Gavin McGinnis as a magazine in 1994 after raising $4 million from Canadian software magnate Richard Selzlinski. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The trio moved the company from Canada to New York City. So, um, it's gone through several. It's gone through several leaders who have not been managing it very well, which this is what always happens when a corporate entity rolls into this. So they're trying to sell themselves. There's a few companies um, interested in it, and they're also apparently considering just selling off branches of themselves. They've got Refinery 29, a marketing agency called Virtue, a fashion platform called ID, and of course their video production, which is Vice Studios. Now, I've actually met people who have worked for Vice at a previous place of employment. They showed up and their team was very friendly and nice. So I just want to say that I feel bad for all the employees who are affected by this. I know this has to be hard, and my prayers go out. I hope that all of the talented people who work in the background with video editing and filming and cinematography and music, and or just the guy doing the upload. I used to be that guy. I still am for some people, but I really hope that you are able to find work. But this just goes to show you, this is what I'm always saying about the corporate press. Whenever they veered, whenever, and CNN is partially responsible for this, although it's been a lot bigger problem. They were just able to hide it better because there was no social media to show it, say, from the 50s to the 2000s. You couldn't really spot political bias. Like, you might hear someone, but then they go, oh, that person's just a commentator. They weren't really reporting the news. They were just giving an opinion, but then soon the opinion news became the news. And one of the things that made Fox News unique at the time, now that's obviously changing, but you had, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, ABC News, and now ESPN, they were all just clamoring the same things. They were all saying the same things. Fox News came along and they started saying something different. Well, now that's not the case anymore. Fox is starting to change. I did a video about how they fired Tucker Carlson. CNN is trying to remake their image, but they're failing hardcore. And Vice was part of that. They went from being this cool, edgy news source that did documentaries in dangerous places to just sort of being like all the other news. It's just they had a cooler website, but and as a result of that, they're shutting down. And I'm not really shedding a tear for Vice Media itself. Like I said, I feel bad for the employees who are caught up in this mess. But Vice did this to themselves. If they had just stuck to that sort of edgy, we're the MTV of the news, I think that would have worked out for them. I think that would have continued to push them because they would have been a unique voice in all of this. But instead, they chose to jump on this bandwagon of, we're just going to talk about one thing from one perspective, and we're just going to hammer it home. And if you don't like it, you're a bigot. And like what's happening with CNN, what's happening with MSNBC, what's happening with Fox, what's happening with News Nation, there's not going to be those voices anymore. And I actually am not convinced that's a bad thing. I think that, or I should say, I'm not convinced. I'm worded that really awkwardly. I'm not convinced that it is a bad thing that the corporate press is falling apart. The fourth estate, as what the media is sometimes referred to, has evolved so much. Or is it the fifth estate? anyway, one of the extra estates besides government and society, whatever it is. Um, it needs to change. It needs reforms. They can't keep up in the social media world because they refuse to change, and Vice Media is part of that. They have all of these networks have a huge political bias, and it's obvious. That's why I don't consume cable news anymore. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch Fox. I find people that I trust, and then I watch those, and 9 times out of 10, they're independent. Sometimes it's a person who works at least for a smaller corporation, but very rarely do I go to any place, especially a place like Vice or say the Young Turks. All these folks who pretend that they're independent media, but really they have these huge corporate backings in the background, or they are regularly invited to YouTube studios to film. I've never been invited to YouTube studios. Of course, I have less than 1,000 subscribers, which is why I'm pushing it. I'm not jealous. I'm happy doing it right here. I love my backdrop. You know, I'm happy to just come to you and to give you my commentary. Thing is, I don't mask my commentary as objective opinion. I do have objective values, but I don't. But for me to say that Rodimus Prime over here, he's the coolest Transformer. I don't believe that. I think Optimus Prime is the coolest Transformer. But just as an example, let's say I think Rodimus Prime is the coolest Transformer. That's an opinion, and it's not objectively true. What I could say is that is objectively true is Rodimus Prime originated in the Transformers movie, which was animated and starred Orson Welles. That's an objective fact. He was voiced by Judd Nelson, by the way, who did an awesome job. And what we're seeing, though, is they're tacking on. So if I was to say that Rodimus Prime originated in Transformers the movie, the animated version that starred Orson Welles, Judd Nelson voiced the character, and he's the greatest Transformer to ever be created. That's now, but do you see how the difference in how I reported that? I reported that opinion as a fact by tacking it onto facts. And that's where the bias comes in, or by the lack of reporting. Sometimes they just say, Rodimus Prime originated in Transformers the movie, and he's the greatest Transformer ever created. And Vice News got caught up in that bias, the lying by omission. This, like I said, the same tactics that are used by the corporate press, by the cable news syndicates, and so on. And I hope that the folks who are affected most by this will be able, their viewers primarily, will be able to find more independent voices, will be able to find news where it matters, that they'll be able to find objective people who just want to get reports, or if they prefer commentary, that they find commentary that they like. Don't get caught up in an echo chamber, obviously. I try to avoid doing that. By the way, I'm the chief among sinners. Sometimes I find myself in an echo chamber and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got to swim my way out of this. But that's just human nature. You want to be you want to be in a tribe. You want to be part of a tribe. So Vice News, though, it appears it's not going to be a tribe anymore because they fell back into that state where cable news is, where they're pushing all of these agendas instead of reporting the news. And it's a huge fault of the news media, and it's really, it's tragic for the workers, which, again, I hope that they find new work. But I think it's a good thing that we're seeing this. I hope that the news media reforms and that it kind of resets and that it takes a good, hard look in the mirror. But I know that is wishful thinking. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up, that you'll leave me a comment, tell me what you think, that you'll share it out with your friends, and of course, consider subscribing to StudioJake. I cover all kinds of nerd and pop culture topics, including film, television, anime, comic books, and so much more. I hope that you'll also head over to my main website, StudioJakeMedia.com, where I have even more news, views, and commentary. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, head over to my locals page. That's StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. It's the best way to support me. I'm trying to build a little community there. I have exclusive reviews and articles, so definitely head over there and check it out. And I'll see you next time, right here on Studio Jake.